So can I formally welcome everybody to this afternoon's meeting of the Executive Panel of the North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority, and a special warm welcome to all the new members that I see on the screen in front of me. Croeso pawb. So the very first item on the agenda is apologies. Alwyn, are you able to give me a list of the apologies we have for today's meeting, please?
We've had apologies from Rondo Roberts and Alan Hughes, Denbighshire.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. So going on to item number 2 on the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest for this afternoon's meeting? Councillor Paul Cunningham, the Deputy Chair.
Chair, as former firefighters, would we have to declare interest? I know if pensions came up, then we would, but it's just to clarify it. I know Rob Traeger's as a former firefighter, and whether we need to declare any interest.
I'll turn to the clerk. Gareth, are you able to advise, please?
It would, as Councillor Cunningham has said, a declaration of interest would be required in relation to the firefighters' pension, discussions about the pension. Most likely that would be a personal interest, but it depends upon the circumstances at the time. But other than that, there would be no requirement for a declaration of interest simply because one has served as a firefighter in the past.
Thank you, Gareth, for that clarification. So I take it that there aren't any declarations of interest for this meeting. So we'll go on now to item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of February 2022, which was the last executive panel meeting. Now, I'm glad to say that my understanding legally is, I'm sure that Gareth will confirm this, that you don't have to be present in the meeting to actually propose and second the accuracy of the minutes, which is a good thing because I think I was perhaps the only person present at the last meeting. So can I invite somebody to propose and to second the accuracy of the minutes from the last meeting, please? Councillor Carol Beard proposing.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Paul Cunningham, thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Can you just raise your hands to show that you're happy that we actually accept the minutes of the last meeting? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, everybody. And then item 5 is matters arising. I've been through the minutes myself. I can't see any matters arising that we need to actually discuss in this afternoon's meeting, unless anybody else can see something that we do need to raise and revisit. No, in that case, we'll move on to item number 6, which is broadening the role of firefighters in Wales, Fire and Rescue Service Capacity Thematic Review. And I'm going to hand over to the Chief to address this item. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chair. This paper brings to members' attention the thematic review produced by the Fire and Rescue Advisor, accepted by the Deputy Minister and published on the 5th of December 2021. It also brings to your attention the letter that has been received recently by the Chair, in which the Deputy Minister asks for a written response as to the acceptability of the recommendations of that review and information as to how we are taking it forward as a Fire and Rescue Authority. So if I can just move on to probably paragraph 8, where it gives a little bit of background to this review, and it talks about how in Wales we have this aspiration to broaden the role of the firefighter to be able to help our colleagues in health, and that work has been undertaken to determine what that could look like, and the scope that has been drafted is that it would involve attending cardiac arrests, doing work around non-injured fallers, going to lift them, and also to supplement the work that we do around prevention by helping to give advice to prevent falls in homes. At the same time as this work was being undertaken, the Fire and Rescue Advisor also looked to see what capacity there was with the fire and rescue services in Wales in order to be able to undertake this work. And his thematic review confirmed that there was capacity, but that the fire and rescue authorities in Wales should consider whether to move to a different shift pattern, whether that would improve capacity, and indeed would it assist the issue around fatigue because of the length of the night shifts. We currently work the traditional pattern here in North Wales, in which the night shifts are 15 hours long. In the intervening time, there has been meetings between Welsh Government officials and ourselves, and the Deputy Minister and the Fire Advisor met with the previous chair and myself at the end of March in Wrexham. We talked through the review and the findings of that review, and I confirmed that as a fire service, we were concentrating on those issues that came from my situational assessment that we felt that was a priority here in North Wales. That is not to dismiss the issue around whether changing shift patterns might be of benefit to us, but that we would look to wrap that up with an independent review of the fire cover that we are about to commission, and that should report back in March next year. Chair, what I would recommend is that members note that review has been undertaken, and also note the recommendations from that review, and also note that we have received a letter from the Deputy Minister, and that members offer their views as to how we should respond to that letter, and that then is the responsibility of writing it is to yourself, with advice from myself, reflecting members' views. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And for the information of anybody viewing this recording, I should point out that all members of the Executive Panel and the Audit Committee have had a full briefing on the thematic review. And just for the information of members here as well, I did attend this morning's Audit Committee meeting when they discussed this subject, because I was keen to hear for myself the feedback from members. And a couple of members in the Audit Committee did say that if, and I emphasise if, any broadening of the role did take place at any future stage within the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, that they certainly wouldn't want to see the core services that we deliver diluted in any way, which I think is an important point. So I'm going to open it up now for any comments or questions for the Chief, please. Thank you. David, the Treasurer, can I invite you to come in? Diolch yn fawr, David. David, dych chi ar mute rwan?
Mae'n catching. Ia, diolch Cadeirydd, a diolch i'r Chief am amlinellu'r gofynion newydd yma a'r dyheuadau o sawl cyfeiriad i wella'r gwasanaeth. Da ni yn wynebu cyfnod o'r draws newid, dwi'n siŵr, ac tra mae'r traws newid yna yn rhywbeth da ni gyd isio amgyffred o mwyn gwella, da ni hefyd mewn cyfnod o gyd-destun o chwyddiant reit ddigynsail. Mae chwyddiant ar hyn o bryd yn uchel iawn, a yn uwch na mae wedi bod ers yr 80au. Rhain o chi mor hen a fi gofio'r 80au pan o chwyddiant yn uwch, ond da ni'n wedi gweld y sefyllfa yr economi fel hyn ers blynyddoedd maith, ac mi fydd hynny wrth gwrs fel ydodd y Chief yn impactio ar drafodaethau cyflog, ac yn ei dro yn bwysau ar gyllideb yr awdurdod. Ac mi fydd hi'n bwysig i chi fod yn medru blaenioraethu yn ofalus wrth reoli'r traws newid sy'n blaenau ni, a wneud hynny'n gyfiawn ac yn fforddiadwy. Dwi'n just nodi hynny rwan fel sylwad yn hytrach na cwestiwn, ond mi fydd trafodaethau diddorol o'n blaen ni fi a chi yn ystod y misoedd nesaf wrth i ni drin â hyn a'r gofynion ariannol eraill arno ni fel awdurdod.
Diolch Dafydd, trafodaethau diddorol ac efallai heriol hefyd. Councillor Paul Cunningham, Deputy Chair.
Sorry about that, Chair. My fingers are not as nimble as they used to be. I think we're in an unfortunate situation in Wales because we've got the Welsh Government asking us to do these extra things, but also the National Fire Brigade or the National Negotiating Panel, you know, the Grey Book and things like that. We're split between the two. We've got the Grey Book, the National Fire Brigade Union saying one thing, and then we've got the unfortunate thing that we want something else in Wales. And I can see that becoming a problem between us here in Wales and nationally. Just a comment, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that comment, Paul. And whether or not we're able to use the challenge to become an opportunity remains to be seen. Are there any other comments or questions before we move on with this item to bring it to a conclusion? No. The Chief has already referred to the recommendations. I'll read them out just for the sake of the recording and for you to be aware. So the recommendations are contained in paragraph 7 of the report, where it says members are asked to note, number 1, the publication of broadening of the role of firefighters in Wales 2021 thematic review report by the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor and Inspector for Wales. And number 2, the subsequent correspondence from the Deputy Minister to the Chair of the North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority and authorise that a response should be written from the Chair in consultation with the Chief Fire Officer, reflecting members' views and sent to the Deputy Minister by the 31st of August 2022. Could I have somebody to propose that? Thank you, Councillor Paul Cunningham. Second, Councillor Carol Beard. Can you show that you're all in agreement, please? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item 7, the annual performance monitoring report for April 2021 to March 2022. And I think it's the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Stuart Forshaw, who's going to present this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is to provide the exec panel with information about incident activity from the 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2022. This is in relation to the authority's improvements and wellbeing objectives and other notable incident activity. So to summarise, during the year, the service attended 5,354 emergency incidents. This was just under a 14% increase compared to the previous year, with road traffic collisions and special service calls being the main reason for this increase. 399 accidental dwelling fires, at which 34 people sustained slight injuries and 5 people sustained serious injuries and 5 people unfortunately lost their lives. And also 207 road traffic collisions, with 71 of those required crews to release or extricate people from vehicles. Service also attended just over 2,500 false alarms, which included a 15% increase in attendances from automatic fire alarm systems, or AFAs as we call them. There were also 958 special service calls, which was a 56% increase to the previous year as a result of a conscious decision taken to increase our attendance at incidents when we can add value or assist other agencies to a successful outcome in the communities in North Wales. The service also completed during the year just over 14,000 safe and well checks, an expected increase on previous years that have been affected by the pandemic. So looking at the performance of each area in more detail, starting with fires, the service attended a total of 1,879 fires, which is just over a 6% increase compared to the previous year, when we attended 1,770. Looking at the fire category types in more detail, the service increased attendances were both domestic and non-domestic buildings, vehicles, and fires involving the outdoors. However, what was pleasing to see was a decrease in the number of chimney fires that we attended, and also a number of deliberate fires at the prison Berwyn, and that was a result of the continuous partnership working that takes place between our business fire safety teams and prison staff. The increase in fires may be a result of the changes in people's behaviours following the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions, though this will be closely monitored during this current year to identify trends and conduct any safety interventions accordingly. And more information on fires can be found on page 20 of the pack. Moving on to false alarms, the service attended just over 2,500 false alarms compared to 2,315 in the previous year. Those originating from automatic fire alarm systems increased to 1,398 from 1,214, with the main contributor being due to the apparatus or non-fire activation, such as a fault, poor maintenance, cooking fumes, for example. This increase is in accordance with the way that the service responds to AFAs with sleeping accommodation, such as hospitals, care homes, sheltered housing, always receiving a response from the service, and other accommodations such as schools, hotels, and halls of residence receiving an immediate response during nighttime hours. Each repeat attendance is then followed up by the fire protection teams to identify how future false alarms in those non-domestic premises can be reduced in the future to allow our crews to be available to respond to more serious incident types and also conduct that essential work activity that they carry out, such as training and risk site visits. More details regarding false alarms can be found on page 22 of the pack. Moving on to special service type incidents. This seen the largest increase of any type of incident we attend during the past year, with special service calls increasing by 56% to 958 from 614. Again, this was expected as the service adopted a different approach in favour of increasing our attendance from requests made from partner agencies at major incidents that they attend. The main contributors to this increase being gain and entry incidents on behalf of the ambulance service, assistance for other agencies to effect entry or exit, also releasing people from lifts, making locations safe other than road traffic collisions, and separating people from any kind of predicament that they may have found themselves in. This increase demonstrates success in the work that has taken place during the year in an attempt to increase our support to incidents originating from partner agencies or members of the public. Our control room operators now have the autonomy to make dynamic mobilising decisions for these types of special service calls made by other responders or partners, and this has resulted in this noticeable increase. Road traffic collisions. The service attended 207 road traffic collisions last year. Again, this was an increase from 105 the year before. This is likely to be a result of more people using the road following the lifting of travel restrictions, which were imposed during the height of the pandemic. The type of tasks firefighters carried out at RTCs included making vehicles safe, or the scene safe on 83% of occasions, and they released people who were trapped in their vehicles on 71 occasions. Again, more details can be found on page 24 of the pack, including the numbers where people sustained an injury and the injury types that we recorded. Moving on to accidental dwelling fires. During the past year, the service attended 399 accidental dwelling fires, and this was 30 more incidents than the previous financial year. Unfortunately, 5 people sustained serious injuries, and an additional 5 people lost their lives as a result of accidental dwelling fires in their homes in North Wales. This was the same number of deaths that we experienced in the previous year. It has been identified through analysis of post-incident data by our corporate planning team that the main contributors to the increase in accidental dwelling fires were cooking-related fires, which either involved chip pans or deep fat fryers, or other cooking-related incidents, with distraction or falling asleep being the main human factors associated with this increase. These contributing factors have been the areas of focus for our service campaigns and communications, utilising social media, partnership engagement, and also what we call hotspotting, which is engaging with members of the community close to where that fire has occurred immediately following the incident. And again, more information can be found on accidental dwelling fires on page 25 and 26 of the pack. Moving on to smoke and heat detectors. So from 399 accidental dwelling fires we attended, it's pleasing to see that almost 90% of those houses had at least one smoke detector fitted in their home. And almost 80% of those where at least one smoke detector was fitted, the fire was contained to the room of origin or where it was first ignited. There was also an increase in the smoke and heat detector was fitted, which did not raise the alarm, from 65 to 78. And at 66 of these, 78 accidental dwelling fires, the fire was confined to the room of origin, as mentioned. This is likely to be the main reason why smoke and heat detectors did not raise the alarm, as they are generally installed on escape routes such as landings and hallways, and are not installed in the most likely room where the fire may originate from, such as a lounge or a kitchen. Again, more information on smoke detectors at accidental dwelling fires can be found in page 28 of the pack. Finally, the service completed just over 14,000 safe and well checks in the community, which was an increase compared to just over 11,000 the previous year. The number of high priority safe and well checks also increased to 6,039, of which 3,285 were in response to referrals that we received from our partner agencies. High priority safe and well checks are those people living in the community who are most likely to have a fire at home and may result in injury or death. This is as a result of them having multiple contributory vulnerable factors, such as being over the pensionable age, smoking, living alone, a previous history of fire. So an increase in the number of safe and wells for these high priority households since the previous year is a success in our prevention targeting activity. Again, more information on safe and well checks can be read on page 27 of the pack. So Chair, the recommendation is, as members note, the contents of this report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for that very helpful overview of the report. I'd just like to make one comment before we go any further. Members may not be aware that it has been a cause of concern for us in the past regarding the large number of fires at HMP Berwyn, and it's really pleasing to see that the reduction over the last 12 months is from 47 to 22. So that certainly shows the good partnership work that's been taking place in that respect. Well done, everybody. So I'm throwing it open to comments and questions. First of all, Councillor Paul Cunningham, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I assure you this is not the Paul Cunningham radio show. Can I just say thank you for that report. It's an excellent report, Chair, and it highlights the breadth of work that we do as a fire and rescue service. Perhaps Councillor Rob Trigg and I go back a long way, and you know, we understand all these things. When you look at the area of North Wales and to have 5 fatal fires, 5 fatal house fires, I think that is a tremendous result. I mean, we don't want any deaths at all in North Wales, but when you think of the expanse of North Wales, I think 5, you know, it's not a bad number. And when you think of all the work that we do as a fire and rescue service, you know, the safety and well-being checks, getting out and getting the word around about what to do in the event of fire, smoke alarms, and so on and so forth. I think it's tremendous, and it shows how dedicated our firefighters are in North Wales, and it stems from the leadership at the top. So congratulations to everybody involved in this report. And might I say, looking at the incidents that were happening in the Greater London area over the last week, where they had major incidents and grass fires, or wildfires as they call them, I think we ought to be proud in North Wales of the work that we've been doing to prevent these things happening. We've learned an awful lot up in North Wales on these things. And again, we should be congratulated. Thank you, Chair, for letting me
Thank you,
speak
Deputy.
on.
Thank you, Deputy Chair, for those positive comments. You mentioned wildfires, and I would like to sort of bring that up because we're all well aware of the challenge, especially given sort of the recent hot weather, of wildfires and how it can be a real drain on resources. Now, if my understanding is correct, looking at the definitions in the report of primary fires and secondary fires, a wildfire would normally be a secondary fire, although it does say that if there's an incident where more than 5 tenders have to attend, then it would become a primary fire. So I presume that sometimes a wildfire can become a primary fire due to the amount of resources that are needed to tackle it. But my question is going to be this, that as it's an area that does sort of take up a lot of resources and is likely to increase, should we be having perhaps a section in the monitoring report which specifically deals with wildfires in terms of the number of calls and how long we have to actually spend to tackle wildfires in terms of the resources that are needed in terms of hours and vehicles? It's just a question. I'd be interested to hear your views on that, Stuart.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we obviously go into more detail with the performance of the types of incidents that we attend during our meetings internally. So wildfire, as you say, is an area of focus for us. We do monitor that wildfires as well in our attendance and the resources that we send there. So yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't include it in the performance report to give members a more of a in-depth awareness of the numbers of incidents we're attending and also the times that we're spending there. So yeah, I can look into that.
Can I throw this open? Would members like to see more information about attendance at wildfires, just to sort of help us get a better overview of this important area of service delivery? Yeah. Okay, if we're able to arrange that for sort of going forward in the future, Stuart, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on?
Chair, could I just come in? I think what you're saying around us concentrating on that activity that is probably generated by climate change would be very valuable for members, but also would be very, very valuable when we're assessing the work that we will be doing around sustainability in the future. So not only wildfires, but also flooding and water incidents. So we would look to put in further information about that. And just picking up Councillor Cunningham's comments about fire deaths, all of us would seek to see no fire deaths each year. But when we think back to 2009, before we really launched the work that we did around prevention, then the number of fire deaths in North Wales was over 12 a year. So 5 is too many. It's 5 too many, but it's certainly a result of that activity that is undertaken not only by our firefighters, but also our community safety officers, and that consistent work bringing down those numbers. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Unless there's any more questions, can go with Ken Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to ask, as a matter of interest, I'm a member of the local planning committee here on Ynys Môn. I'm just interested to know how much input do you have with the planning officers, for instance, where new applications are coming in for new housing estates and that type of stuff. Have you so much power that you can tell them, no, you can't build that unless you do X, Y, Z, or whatever? I'm just interested to know how much power you have, actually. Thank you.
Can I invite Stuart Millington to answer that? Thank you, Stuart.
So Chair, happy to answer that. So yes, we do get consulted under the Town and Country Planning Act, but it's only in relation to 2 areas of business, 2 things that we can consult on. One is access for fire appliances, and the other is water supplies. So in terms of saying, no, you can't have it, we sort of don't have those powers. But what we can do is make sure that the access is suitable and sufficient for a fire appliance to attend, and that there is sufficient hydrants to be able to deal with a fire in those locations. So they're the two areas that we can consult on under the Town and Country Planning Act.
Can I just ask again quickly, sorry, Chair, in your opinion, do you think you should have a little bit more say in these matters, or is it sufficient as it is?
So just before you answer that, Stuart, I can see that the clerk has got his hand raised, so I'll just ask Gareth if he wanted to come in at this stage.
I'll try saying that without being on mute. Quite happy to go after ACFO Millington, Chair.
That's fine. I was just checking that there wasn't a sort of a legal issue. Stuart, back to you. Yeah, well.
So in terms of whether we should or shouldn't, I think that we are in a position where the landscape is changing following the learning from Grenville and how developments and how the consultation process, not only around planning, but also around the building built sort of environment per se, is changing. So I think it's a case of watching this space, because I think nationally we may see some change in that going forward.
And just to supplement that, Chair, of course, fire safety is a part of building regulations. And so whilst you wouldn't look at it at the planning stage, at the subsequent construction stage, there are bodies that look into fire safety in certain, perhaps not perfect, but there are certain circumstances where fire safety requirements are enforced by local authorities.
Yeah, Gareth, thank you, and thank you, Stuart. So the recommendation is contained in paragraph 4 of the report, which is just that we note the contents of the annual performance monitoring report. Can I have somebody to propose that, please? Ken Taylor proposed and Councillor Rob Trigg seconded. Can you show that you all accept the contents of the report, please? Diolch yn fawr. So item number 8 is urgent matters. There aren't any urgent matters, but can I just take this opportunity to highlight the meeting that takes place on the 13th of September at Rill Fire Station? There's an induction session in the morning for new members, and can I encourage any new members who didn't make the previous induction session to please attend the induction session in the morning on the 13th of September. And then in the afternoon, there's a workshop for all the members. And then if you can let Alwen know if you're able to attend or will be attending, that'd be wonderful. And then the last item on the agenda is any part 2 matters. There aren't any. So that brings the agenda to an end. Can I thank everybody for their attendance and contribution today? Diolch yn fawr iawn I pawb sydd wedi mynychu ac am eich cyfraniadau. Diolch, the meeting is at the close. Bye now.
Diolch.
Diolch.